Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast where a behavioral scientist examines what it's like to live a humorous life. Glimpse into the lives of the funniest people in entertainment, business, and science as your host, Dr. Peter McGraw, explores their habits, motivations, and secrets to success. Get ready to fire up your brain and your funny bone. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast that looks at the lives of funny people. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is NatalieBarandes. Natalie is a producer, writer, and director. As founder and creative chief of Joy Factory, she creates original content for TV, film, digital, and mobile companies. Welcome, Natalie.
Hi, Peter.
So Natalie, I always ask this of my guests. If you weren't directing, writing, or producing, what would you be doing with your life?
I think I would be a chef.
Okay.
I'd be a chef. I would be a chef in an open kitchen restaurant with like a wood-fired grill.
Okay.
And I'd want to make people happy eating great food and drinking and enjoying themselves.
So it's interesting. So that's a first. No one's ever said chef in this podcast. Do you think that the skills of a chef are similar to the skills of a writer, director, producer? Like, do you think it would be a parallel world?
I think they're complete. When people go out to eat, they want to have a good time,
yes.
Right? They go there to find a joyous experience.
Yes.
And to me, entertainment, the reason I call it the Joy Factory is because I want entertainment to be joyous. I want people to go to it because it's something that isn't their. It's a part of their real life, but it's an aspect of their life that's really kind of gives them some extra pleasure. Mm-hmm. And I think when you go out for a meal. Listen, it's not eating at home and just whipping something together and throwing a bowl of cereal. You go out and you want a chef to bring you an experience.
Yes.
And you want the waiter to treat you nicely, and you want your beverage to be a certain way, and you want your meal to taste good, and you want to be with friends or family or a loved one or a special occasion, and you want to do something that feels, wonderful.
Yeah, I think this, I don't know, honestly don't know much about restaurants, but what I do understand about the chef is that they have, right, a good chef doesn't just create a menu. They hire and fire and they deal with supply chain. And, right, they are a business person on top of being a creative, right? It's this sort of overlapping Venn diagram.
You're producing.
Yeah.
You're producing something. You take it. Figure it this way. If you're a chef and you want to create a restaurant, the first thing you do is you come up with an idea, concept. So you say, okay, I want this to be like, I love Italian food, but I want it to be Italian food. And you go into an empty space and you envision it, right? And then you decide where are people going to sit and how are they going to feel and where is the kitchen going to be and what kind of people do you want to have around you? What do the waiters wear and all of that? And it's the same thing with when you come up with an idea in entertainment. You're setting a stage, you're creating a story. And I think a restaurant or a meal or a special occasion is all around, you want people to walk away and go, God, that was a great evening. Wasn't that fun?
Yeah, I think that's right. It also explains why both businesses have such high failure rates, right? It's so difficult to do that well. Yeah,
and consistently well, because it's up to what people are into at that particular time. It's the same thing with entertainment. It's like everybody's into, we all like police dramas,
right.
And then we hate
right now it's fried chicken.
Right.
Right. Fried chicken is like a thing in restaurants.
Yes. And sitcoms weren't a thing and now they are a thing again, so it's like, it's the same thing.
So I want to talk to you about your creative side, but first I actually want to talk about producing. Because I think the average person has no idea the challenges associated with producing television, film, even commercials, all this kind of stuff. So how did you get your producing chops? Like, where did that come from? How'd you get good at that?
Well, I grew up in New York, and my dad and my uncles were in entertainment law. So I grew up going to Broadway shows, being a New Yorker. And so we used to go backstage all the time.
Okay.
And I thought everybody went backstage. I thought everybody met the talent. Like I didn't. What did I know? We would go to the show and then we would wait and then we'd go to the stage door and then we'd go backstage. And I thought, oh, that's what people do. But so, And so my dad represented and my uncles represented producers.
Okay.
And we stood in the back and we went to rehearsals, and I had gone to casting, and in college I was a theater major. And so I always liked the idea of taking something from nothing and then seeing the whole thing through up until that culmination of either the night of the show,
okay,
or the day that the screening happened, or putting something on television. It has a beginning, middle, and end, and that's what producing is. It really is having a big vision for everything.
Okay.
And knowing one thing, I think, and I think this goes for great producing and the great producers I've ever worked for, you have to have a team.
Uh-huh.
It is so not about one person. It's about knowing what you're really good at and knowing what other people are even better than you at.
Okay.
And I don't have an ego about it. I just don't have, that's not how I'm built about that, about having an ego about, I'm so great at something. There are things I feel I'm really good at, and there's so many things so many people are better than I am.
So what are some of the things you're not as good at?
Details.
Okay.
Details I like to see the details, but there are people that are so great with just sitting down and just getting everything organized.
Mm-hmm.
And putting out fires and things like that in terms of a full crew, crunching the numbers. You have to know how to do that. And what I hate to do is I hate to ask for favors.
Okay.
And I hate to have to negotiate people's rates down.
Okay.
I like to pay people what's fair. As a producer, of course, you're always watching what your budget is.
Yeah, right. So, so the elements of producing, right? So it's choosing a project, financing the project, casting the project, and perhaps selling the project, producing, actually overseeing the creation of the content and the people who do that, and then figuring out some distribution strategy for this. So, obviously, there's lots of different skills that you need.
Yeah, there are. I think the thing that most people don't realize, the art of producing, and that now I'm older, so I feel a little bit more comfortable saying this, but you're really navigating personalities.
Okay.
And that's really what the most important thing is. Right now we're in the middle of a project, and I have to handle everybody. I have to handle the person that's paying for it. I have to handle the talent. I have to handle the lawyers. And it's making everybody feel like they're very special.
Okay.
And that everything they have to say matters.
Uh-huh.
And making them feel that the decisions they're making are the right decisions, even though you're really manipulating them to make the decisions you want them to make.
I see.
Right? So it's like saying, I agree. We're on the same side here, Peter. You're absolutely, you're 100% right. And I want to get that for you.
Uh-huh.
And then you're like, oh, great. And then I say to the next person, I love what you're saying, and you're right. We've got to get Peter to agree to that.
Uh-huh.
And you're really getting, compromise, and you're getting people on board and compromising. And that's the hardest thing. It really is, because people want to stand their ground. They want what they want, whether it's the talent or the writer or the credit or the fee,
mm-hmm.
or, and so, and in television and movies, people, the whole great thing about making entertainment,
mm-hmm.
From a producing standpoint, is the big goal. The big goal is, if we sell this, what will it be and how will it look? Right? And you can imagine that. So, for example, when I know the producers of Will and Grace, and they were two young guys, I knew them when they were two kids who were writing a pilot, and I don't think they ever dreamed that they would be, not only create one of the greatest sitcoms of all time, then have a dormant period and then recreate it again.
Yes,
right. I mean, that's a success story like you can't even imagine. But you can't imagine what it would be. That's not what they went into it. They went into it writing what they believed in.
They wanted to write a good script.
Right.
Yeah. So you're good at managing people, negotiating, pushing people towards this vision.
I think so. I think that's what I do. And I think also I'm at a stage in my life too where, having, and I've been a female in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I haven't been.
Since the beginning.
Since the beginning. Yes, that goes without saying. And it's not like, when I got into the business, I never looked at it like I was a female director.
Okay.
Or a female producer. I just was who I was. I didn't think about it. And the generation that I got in at, I got into the business, like my first jobs were in the early 80s. And there were a lot of women breaking the glass ceiling at that time. And it was a very open forum. And no one ever said to me, oh, you're a woman, you're not going to do that. I mean, there were certain things they pushed me towards. They were like, why don't you do, when I was in the commercial business, they're like, why don't you do some feminine products? And I'm like, because I like comedy. So I ended up in comedy, which is, and certainly very male-dominated comedy. Mm-hmm. I happen to like slapstick and ridiculous things. And I grew up on things like, I Love Lucy and the Three Stooges, and and so I like and I love sports.
Okay.
And I ended up working with the NFL, and I did spots for the NFL with a comedy bent to it. But I like things that are non-traditional. I didn't do feminine products. I just don't. It's not something that was particularly interesting to me, or beauty, or the things that women were particularly being pushed towards.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, your perspective didn't actually lend itself to those things very much.
No. And then I was lucky that along the way, I just sort of did what I wanted to do. Just like I was saying about the guys that wrote the script they wanted to write.
Yes.
I just always kind of stayed in that.
Yeah, I want to ask about this. So I've noticed this more and more, and I sense the tension as a marketing professor. There's this, so in marketing, there's on one hand, there's sort of like the Apple model of marketing, which is, if you build it and you build it well, they will come. The customers can't tell you what they want, and that you have to have some great skill to be able to create, the iPod, the smartphone, all those kinds of things. On the other hand, it's this idea of being very problem focused and finding out the problems, understanding the consumers incredibly well, and then devising something often in conjunction with the consumer, getting their feedback all along the way, this sort of fail fast, lean methodology. And then the thing that survives is going to be the thing that's likely to be successful because it's so battle tested. And clearly both models can work. I think the latter model works typically better, but you could easily point to exceptions, right? Like Steve Jobs and so on. When it comes to creative work, it does seem to be more of this like visionary, there's this thing that I wanted to create. I couldn't be too concerned about what the audience would think, because I needed to make this sort of special thing. And I've heard you say that. And I think that's a really interesting, approach, right? So it seems to be a high risk, high reward approach in the following way. Like, is that you may completely miss the mark, because you're operating on your own and you're using your tastes and your beliefs primarily as the focus. But you might also hit it big because you're going to come up with something that no one else is going to come up with. How do you think about it? Why do you think that way? Where did that come from?
Well, I want to go back to something you said,
Sure.
So in terms of marketing, there's about a good chunk of my life in the last 20 years where I was in direct marketing. I worked for a company called Beachbody.
All right.
And Beachbody created P90X.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you talk about a need,
Yes.
What they did and what direct marketing does, I think, so brilliantly, and what's really, really interesting about it is that we're buzzing.
No problem.
Go around that. But what they did brilliantly with P90X is they said they went against what people wanted to do. People want to get fit, skinny, ripped, and healthy without having to work hard.
Which is impossible.
Of course it's impossible. So what they did was it went against the market, okay? Because everybody was like, we're going to make it fast and easy. Mm-hmm. So you know what they said? No, we're not. We're going to make it slow, hard, and we're going to bust your ass. We're going to make it so difficult. And that's why it was called Power 90X, meaning extreme. So they said, we're going to make it so goddamn hard that very few people are going to make it through this thing. Okay. But if you do, you're going to
be
get
ripped and strong and
right.
Oh yeah, right.
So in a sense, it taught me a lot, and I also learned a lot about marketing, and I learned a lot about all of that. Entertainment is, you got to write what you know.
Okay.
Because if you try to write what you think the audience wants, you're going to fail.
In part because that might not be the thing that you can best write.
All great entertainment, from my perspective, has to come from a deep place.
Okay.
Just like music. Like, you couldn't ask, I don't think you could have gone to the Beatles and said, oh, you're writing all this rock and roll stuff. Well, you got to write a pop song. They'd be like, we're going to write the music we want to write because this is what comes out of us when we're all together as the Beatles. You don't go to a band and say, I need you to make this music. They make the music that feels right to them. Well, you have to write the story that feels right to you.
Yeah, and then just live with the results, knowing that you've written it for yourself.
I think truth and authenticity just rules. For some particular reason, if you think about things that are successful, like I'll take Get Out. Okay? I think he wrote what he felt like writing.
Yeah.
I think Jordan Peele was a guy that said, this is something I feel like writing, and he wrote it, and he did a great job, and it's very successful.
Yeah. And it's different, right? That's one of the key things.
He didn't write it because it was different. He wrote it because that's what he wrote.
Yeah.
It was different because it was his voice, and everybody's voice is different. You're not like any other professor.
Oh, I know.
No, it's true. Of course.
Yeah.
And you're not like any other person. We're all uniquely who we are. And the more independent and authentic we are to who we are, the more our stories are.
Yeah, to relate it to marketing, I teach my students about doing what we call a 3 C's analysis. So what goes into that is you do analysis of the customer, you do an analysis of the competitor, and you do analysis of the company, yourself. And what the key part of the company C is to understand what your core competencies are. That is, what are you good at? And the key is that you should be making things that you're good at making, right? And so, and so when there's a mismatch, that's when you get in trouble. So when you're good at making something that the customer doesn't want or need, your business is in trouble. When you're good at making something that your competitors are better at making, you're in trouble, right? And so it's like seeking out this space in the marketplace that allows you to be yourself as much as possible and serve the customer better than the competitor.
And I started my career in creating promos and movie trailers. So I was in movie marketing and TV marketing. People always said, how do you know how to do it? And you're like, you know what? I got to sell the show. I don't have to make the show. I have to sell the show.
Okay.
So I'll take it again. You could have a beautiful vision for a television show about 2 people who are in love, and it's a very special love story. But there's a crazy scene in there where you're both dancing and being ridiculous. And I think that's going to sell your show, even though it's not that show.
You're going to use it.
I'm going to use it.
Yeah.
Because my job is not to try to second guess what's the best part of the show. It's to try to second guess what people are going to respond to turn it on.
Mm-hmm.
As a movie marketer, as a TV marketer, you just want to get people to show up.
Okay, right.
And in the movie marketing business, we always just say, just get them there the first weekend. Mm-hmm. That's all that really matters. And when you say, how come I saw the best parts of the movie? Well, because that's what we want you to see. Uh-huh. We want you to go in there. And it's not like we want you necessarily to go in there with feeling deceived. I don't want you to feel deceived.
Okay.
But I want you to feel that it's something that you want to see. Mm-hmm. So I'll give you an example. There was a movie that we worked on years ago with a very famous filmmaker. And the movie was terrible. And it was tragic. And it really seriously tragic. I mean, it was about like death and awful things. Okay. So it was what we call a turkey.
Okay.
Like it was really bad. And I remember sitting in the screening, and this was a very well-respected filmmaker at the time, and this was in the 90s, and I was working at Sony. And we were sitting in this very expensive screening room, and nobody wanted to say anything. And we were watching dailies.
Okay.
And dailies is what, back in the day when you were shooting film, you would just see scenes, with like, it would say like the film was rolling, and executives would come in to see some of the dailies.
Okay.
And we were all sitting there, and it was awful. It was just awful. And I was sitting in the back, and I was still one of the young producers then, and and everybody was like, they were all sitting there very quietly, and then the filmmaker was in the room. They were like, "It's brilliant, it's brilliant," and I'm sitting there thinking, you all know this is terrible because you're going to leave this filmmaker, you're going to get back into the room,
and you're going to tell you how terrible.
We're all going to talk about like how are we going to save this thing?
Yes, right.
And of course, we didn't save it. I think we got people there the opening weekend, but it was a really bad film.
Yeah,
it was
that's
just
unfortunate.
Badly done, and the concept was just too sad and too tragic, and there was really no way around it. And now again, there's a filmmaker doing something that was from their heart, something that was from their soul, but it didn't.
Yeah, it's like with the conflict between art and commerce. That when people are spending lots of money to make this film, it can't just be about art, right? And that's a risk of it all. So I want to ask you about your creative side, right? So you have this producer side, which is very practical, making sure that this vision is moving forward and managing egos and negotiating and all those kinds of things. But you also do a lot of creative work, right? So you have this other side to your career. You like that more?
Well, I approach all my producing from a creative side.
Okay.
I think that's just the nature of who I am. I always see the big idea first, and what's the story, and what are we trying to say? What are we trying to do here?
Okay.
What's the purpose of what we're doing?
Okay.
What's the story? What are the characters? What's at the bottom of the whole thing?
Okay.
First, and with everything I do.
Even when you're doing a commercial.
Even when I'm doing a commercial, it's what are we trying to sell here, and what's the best way to position this thing to get people to pay attention and want it.
Okay.
Commercials, movies, television shows, books, all of this stuff is even direct response. You want somebody to want what it is you have, right? And then to either buy it or watch it or engage in it. I think it's a restaurant, it's a movie, it's a fitness program. It's a book.
An app, yes.
Anything. Do people want it, and are they going to buy it, watch it, engage?
Okay. All right. So you're talking about story, you're talking about characters. These are the things that people want. People want good stories. They want compelling narrative. They want to be drawn in. And so this affects when you say yes or no to a project.
Yeah, I sort of see it through a lens, and I think I see it through a lens of comedy.
Yes.
And I know this hasn't been a very funny conversation, but the truth of it is that the lens of comedy is saying that instead of seeing things from this like, heavy point of view, I'd much rather see things for the irony and the, when you really look at something from a really true perspective, it is all so ridiculous on so many levels, isn't it? I mean, so much of it, like really. I mean, look, the best movies about war are, to me, are MASH and I was just watching How I Learned to Love the Bomb.
Oh yes, Dr. Strangelove. Yes.
And I think you get such a clear idea of just how insane things are through great comedy.
Right. So all things equal, you're always going to choose the comedic project before, or you're going to try to take a serious project and make it comedic?
Even if I take a very serious project, it's always going to have a level of, I don't know the word comedy or humor, but heart and smile and joy.
Levity.
Yeah, just something that isn't, really, there's so much we could look at. I'm not a documentarian. Okay. Necessarily, although I love real life. Mm-hmm. Again, in real life, I try to find what's funny.
So how do you find what's funny? Like, how do you, when you're looking at a serious scene, a serious story, when you're seeking out the irony, the levity, whatever, like, do you have a technique? Do you have a system? How do you do this?
Wow, technique or a system?
Well, like, yeah.
Boy, no, that's a funny question because it's hard to say. I think if you look for what the truth in somebody is, what's quirky about somebody is what's going to make it funny.
Okay.
So, for example, I'll just take a very physical thing because a physical thing is easy.
Sure.
If you have a very tall character,
right?
What do you want? What's funny about a tall character? A tall character in a place that doesn't accommodate their tallness is going to be funny. Okay. Now that's physical and that's slapstick and all of that stuff, but that gives you an example of like, so if a character
it creates a challenge.
Yeah. I am incredibly neat and clean. Okay. So what would make life really funny for me is something that is just disgusting. Right. I am truly funny when it's disgusting.
Yes. It's the odd couple, right? You bring clean and messy together.
And then it's funny, which is...
Two messies, two cleans isn't funny.
Benign violation, right, Peter? I learned a lot from Peter McGraw's book called The Humor Code about the benign violation theory. No, and it's true. And it's putting someone or putting a character into a situation that is going to make them have to deal with something that doesn't necessarily work.
Yeah, I think... so I'm actually very flattered by you because you like the theory and that you even you've told me that you seek out these benign violations when you're writing as almost like a check. I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I'm always flattered when people in comedy are accepting of the theory more than when academics are accepting of the theory. To me, that's like, these are folks who, your whole life is around comedy. A lot of your business is around comedy. Your social life is around comedy. I've spent time with you. The way you interact is comedic, is funny, which is why you're on this podcast, obviously. Right. And so you have 100 times more experience than the average academic thinking about humor. And so when a comic says to me, "Oh yeah, I think that seems pretty right to me," I have trouble finding counterexamples. I always feel good about that.
Well, comedians write jokes, and we craft stories and situations. I think comedy for me certainly come out of real things.
Okay.
So
you're not, because you're a joke writer?
I'm not a joke writer at all.
Okay.
No, there are people that are great at that.
Yeah, I know. It's an amazing skill.
It's a beautiful skill. And I don't have that. People that write funny. I think I see funny in life. I laugh at real things that happen. That when you walk into the wall by accident, I don't know why I find that funny, but I do. And I think I've been making fun of my parents my entire life. That's absolutely without.
And you just saw your mom just turn 80.
Oh, yes. My mother, we make fun of her relentlessly. We're relentlessly making fun of my mother because she's very tightly wound.
Okay.
So you have to make fun of her because it's so ridiculous to watch her do everything.
I see.
And
how does she react to that?
She's been laughing about it her whole life.
Yeah, that's nice.
She was a terrible driver, like the worst driver ever. And would say, "I'm not a very good driver," which was an understatement at the time. like an epically terrible driver.
Okay.
Yes. So you have to make fun.
Yeah.
You're how else do you live with that?
So just describe your kind of day to day. You wear a lot of hats. You have a lot of things that are happening. What's a typical day in your life like? Do you have a typical day?
Yeah, well, I have a 13-year-old son.
Okay.
So that's already funny.
All right.
Because it's gross. It's truly one of the most disgusting things I've ever lived with. As a person that is really neat and clean.
I was once a 13-year-old boy, and so I think I understand what you're talking about.
There's just nothing. It's so... It's an epic stench that it emanates from it permeates the house. Sometimes I just go
is it Axe body spray? Is it
no
BO?
It's food, it's BO, it's forgetting to brush your teeth and washing your hair. There's just no. It's just like this sweet little delicious child that I used to clean and loved and has become this beast. He's like this little gorilla.
Yeah.
It is gross. And
so that's the start of your day.
Yeah,
you and the gorilla having breakfast.
Yes. Ugh. Yeah, it's just horrible.
Do you tease him about this?
Oh, relentlessly.
Yeah.
Relentlessly, yes. And of course my son has 2 mothers.
Okay.
2 Jewish mothers. So he has it like a lot harder than a lot of kids.
Yeah, I see.
If you have one
Twice the guilt.
Oh my God, it's like I think this poor kid, like if he comes out of this life, he has a great sense of humor though.
Well, that seems to be a nice recipe.
Has to.
Yeah.
Has to, right?
Okay, so you start your day with your kid, you get him off to school or
get him off to school. Share an office with a creative agency, which has been really comfortable for us, and a lot of creative people in there, always, coming up with big ideas. They're an idea machine, so It's really fun to be around them. And we write and we create, we make lists, and we come up with ideas. And sometimes I'll wake up in the morning, I'm like, wow, wait, I have this idea. Okay. This is something we have to do. Recently, we came up with a show, not that funny, but a lot of fun though, called Waste to Taste, and it's a show about food waste.
Okay.
And the idea of turning food waste into gourmet meals. And I like this idea because I cook a lot and I waste a lot of food. And I thought, this would be, what could you do with all of this stuff? I mean, there's just piles of this stuff.
Okay, so that's a fun idea. Where did that come from? How did that come up?
I was looking around at some videos at some point about chefs for some particular reason. And I came up with this chef in Italy who takes all this food waste and he does these beautiful things with it. And I said, oh my God, that is just cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool. What if we took chef competition like Top Chef and we had people compete with food waste? And again, lighthearted, because you'd have to go.
That's going to have to be comedic.
It has to be comedic. You're going to go into a supermarket and they're going to go, oh, you want to see all the stuff we throw away? Here you go. And it's going to be kind of a mixture of gross and interesting and, and you're going to go, okay, but a really great chef is going to look at it and go, wait a second, I have a great idea here. And again, like we're talking about the creative process, it's just kind of the same thing. We have scrambled eggs in our head, all the time. There's a million things going on.
There's a lot of work on, so typically constraints are a problem in business. A lack of time, a lack of resources, you just don't make something as good as possible. However, there are cases where creativity is enhanced due to constraints. And so when you force someone to have limitations, it actually makes them, think divergently, think about other ways to go about doing things. And sometimes you get something that was better than you might have had there not been a constraint, which I think is an interesting paradox.
Oh, you're 100% right. I mean, I think because I've always hustled, I mean, I've always been on either owned my own business or I've been independent. We never got fat and lazy because if I didn't hustle, I didn't get a paycheck. And if I didn't get a paycheck, I didn't get to do the things I wanted to do. So I think so many of us in the entertainment industry, it's like time and money. I don't want to hear your belly aching. Make it work.
Yeah.
And you have to make it work.
Yeah. So I want to get back to this. So you're in the space. It's a creative space. There's interesting people. You're there long hours, short hours.
Pretty concentrated hours. We really focus. I mean, I treat writing and creating, it's a business.
Yes.
And we have lives. And I have very respectfully to people's lives. I don't like to work much past 6:30.
Okay.
I just think that's when people should be with their families or their friends, or they should do what they need to do.
Okay.
Exercise and being healthy is extremely important to me.
I agree with that. And also I think that fuels the creative process.
Yeah. I'm a cancer survivor. Okay. So, for me, I'm already on borrowed time. I always say that to people and they're always like, come on. I'm like, I didn't look at my cancer as anything, tragic. Oh yeah. It was bad.
Okay. How long ago was this?
That was 6 years ago.
Okay.
And I was diagnosed and it was, a late stage and all of that. And I'm fine. I'm great.
That's great.
But I decided that, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go for it the rest of my life. Yeah. I'm going to do the things I want to do. I'm going to be with the people I want to be with. And I'm going to try to create joy, which is why I called my company The Joy Factory. And I want to have fun. And ideas come with a lot of opening up space to, I don't know about, do you meditate?
A little bit. I have a lapsed practice. I A few years ago, I decided that I was going to start meditating. I started doing loving kindness meditation, 10, 20 minutes a day. And it had a big effect. And then someone who's been on his meds for a while thinks, oh, I'm okay now. I don't need to do this. I've slowly lapsed back into my sort of pre-meditative habits. I found that the loving kindness stuff really took the edge off. I just ended up being a more compassionate, less angry driver, and so on. And I'll be honest, I know I ought to be doing it again because I know it's good for me.
It opens up your brain.
Yeah. So what type of meditation do you do?
It depends on the day. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 3 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes.
Okay.
Sometimes it's yoga, sometimes it's a hike, sometimes I swim.
I see.
You have to start from a place like that. And then for some, I don't know why characters sometimes they're people in my life
mm-hmm.
and they just motivate characters. I've seen them and I want to create a character around them. You want to talk about the humor code?
Sure, we can talk about the humor code. Yeah, we can do it. I wanted to say one thing real quick about that idea. There's this trail run in Boulder that I do. It's actually one of my favorite parts of that place. It's one of the few things I truly miss when I'm away. Mm-hmm. And when I'm in shape, which fortunately I'm pretty good about staying in shape. When I do that run, I do it no headphones. And I almost always come off that mountain with 1 or 3 ideas. And these are solid ideas because it's one of those things, I got to pay enough attention to the world and I'm working hard, but I feel good. It's beautiful. So I have this nice mix, and I get off the mountain and I quickly write down the ideas that I have. And I'm like, that I have the best job in the world, right? Because I just did something that was good for my mind, my body, my soul, and my career. I can count that as work in a way that most people don't get a chance to do. That's as close as I come to meditation right now.
Well, you just said a great thing too. Work, people say, well, retirement, things I don't consider what I do work.
Yeah.
It's what I do. I write stories all the time in my head, or I create ideas and things that I care about, So running, like you say, work is your life and life is your work, And so running, and if that helps you find an idea, or like you say, or getting on a plane and sitting next to somebody and they tell you something and you're like, wow.
That's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. My personal and professional life are so tightly wound. It's almost like, I think of artists in that way, that it's very difficult to pull the personal life and the professional life of an artist apart. So you think about these impressionist French painters. They'd paint and then they'd go to the cafe and hang out with other French impressionist painters, and they would talk to each other, and they would be challenged, and they would grow, and they would be inspired, and then they would go back the next day and do it. And I don't think what they did was difficult, but I don't think they felt like it was work the way someone who works in a factory thinks about their life as work, which is I show up, I do this thing, I stop doing it, and I do it for the paycheck so that I can do other things.
They say that. It's funny you say that, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, they say that,
mm-hmm.
but if you think about it, those people that work in a factory have a community too. They do go out and have beers together.
That's true.
And They have Sunday barbecues with the people they work with.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And their kids go to school together.
Mm-hmm.
So even though they say, oh, my work life and my home life, no, they're not. If you work at the factory in your town, those are the people that you spend your life with.
That's a good point. So your argument is they're not as different from those French painters as I might have portrayed them.
No, they may not talk about their work with passion the way we do, they may not say, oh, I weld. Some do though. Some people do.
There are a lot of tradespeople who are more like artists than they are.
And proud.
Yes. I think
and there are people, again, my reference point is food a lot. And you watch people in kitchens who it's like a production.
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with you. I think if I hadn't gone to college and I didn't end up white collar, and I had to go back and pick, I might have chosen to be a plumber.
It's artful.
It is. It's a surprisingly good job.
It's a great
Pays
job.
well. You can be creative. You're valued, right? Like, who's not happy to see the plumber?
Well,
show
especially
up?
if your toilet's open.
Exactly. And it's a craftsperson that truly is a creative skill, because you're solving problems.
Production, when you go to a set,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been on sets for 40 years now, and it's beautiful to watch. Like the day you show up to shoot,
Mm-hmm.
it's fantastic. And I'm so comfortable because I've done so many jobs in productions, and I started as a production assistant, and I drove the van, and I answered the telephone. I mean, I've been every, low level thing, and I loved every minute of it. But you get there, and the craftsmanship of the sound man is so specific about his little station where he sets up the audio and he gets the microphones just right. And the gaffer is worried about the lighting, and the grip makes sure everything is secured and solid and safe. And the script supervisor is making sure every line is perfect.
Yeah, it's this level of professionalism.
Everybody there is doing a craft, and they're
Mm-hmm.
very proud of what they do.
Yeah.
And everybody there is to contribute to the whole, and its community.
I think this is a really overlooked part of well-being, that idea. All right, so
You want to go to the humor code?
You talk about this, because it'll be awkward for me to talk about it.
All right. Well, so I met this guy. His name is Peter McGraw, this tall professor from the University of Colorado at Boulder. And he says he's a marketing professor, and he brings in this book with this producer friend of mine. And they say they want to do kind of a reality show, like a Mythbusters show.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, yeah, my kid watches that show. That could be an interesting way to do this.
You're being nice right now. You're like, that's obvious. That's too obvious.
And I said, let me take a look. So I read the book, and I came back and I said, wait a second, I have a whole other idea. I don't know where it came from, because, that's like saying, I don't know. Who knows where anything comes from? You don't know where a song comes from either, right? I don't know where it came from. But all of a sudden I had this story in my head, and I had these characters, and I said, I know what this show is, and I want it to be about this family that's in the business of comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And what I walked away from the book with was a couple of things that are really, really important. One is, and I say this, the benign violation theory,
Mm-hmm.
which in the book is really dry and not that interesting to read about, but in application, it's the fundamental for what I think really makes something truly funny.
Okay.
In real life,
Mm-hmm.
and in a story.
So that felt like an insight for you.
I think it was like, kind of like making meditation really simple.
Mm-hmm.
People say, oh, it's closing your eyes and shutting off your mind.
Yeah.
No, what it's really doing is it's being present.
Okay.
And I know that sounds really simple. And you go, when somebody says to you, oh, meditation is really just about being present. And you go, oh, well, that's easy. That's a lifetime. You gotta work at that every minute
so
of
hard.
every day. Yeah, exactly.
So hard.
Well,
It's why I'm not meditating right now.
Okay. Well, the benign violation theory to me seems really, really, really simple.
Uh-huh.
But when you start to craft a story around it, and I think I would use it if I was reading other people's scripts and saying, the reason this isn't funny is because nothing is really violated here. Nothing is benign and nothing is violated. And if you don't do those two things, it's not funny.
Yeah.
So we created the story. Anyway, it's about a family that's in the business of comedy.
Okay.
And it's about a guy that writes a book called The Humor Code. And his name is Peter. This is all true. And Peter is a professor who loses his job in our story.
Yes.
He loses his job to a woman who's a professor, and her area of expertise is in osmology.
Okay. This is new to me.
Which is the science of smell.
I see.
And she's an osmologist.
Okay.
And why is that important? Well, I started doing some research on what are some of the newer areas of social psychology and marketing. And it is the idea of smell and attraction.
Yes, okay.
And I thought, wow, that would be a shiny new thing at a new university, and it might push the humor code out.
Okay.
gives us a really convenient way to get Peter out of the academic world
yes,
and
back to Hollywood.
Back to Hollywood,
yes,
where he has grown up. So our character of Peter has grown up in a entertainment business family. Uh-huh. His mother, single mother, raised him. His father was absent. He was a comedian and had disappeared early on, and had left him with his mother, who was a lover of life, very successful businesswoman, managing comedy careers for comedians. Mm-hmm. Has a son that, out of all the things, is just not funny. Okay. He's incredibly bright and understands comedy on such a scientific, deep level. But God damn it, he's just not funny. And of course, he believes that the way to his mother's heart and the way to gain his mother's love is through being funny. Mm-hmm. He's just not funny. So he decides to pursue funny as an academic career. Okay. He has a younger brother named Richie from another father, because his mother likes to have a good time.
She's a lover of life.
She's a lover of life and a lover of young, handsome, charming men, and finds herself another one and ends up with another kid. Raises these two boys the best she can and does a pretty damn good job and a pretty terrible job at the same time. Okay. When we meet these characters, they're all at a crossroads. Pretty much everybody in our story is at a crossroads. Their careers are changing. Their lives are changing. They either have to evolve and change, and they will need each other in order to survive. Okay. It's a pretty typical story. Mm-hmm. And that's the humor code. And we sort of say it's a story. It is about show business, about the comedy business. It's a situation about comedy. Yeah. It's not a sitcom.
Yes, I see. So it's not a situational comedy. It's a situation about comedy. That's very nice. It's incredibly flattering to, obviously, to have this happening. It's exciting, right? Who knows what'll come of it all? But for me, is like what's fun about this idea is like it really is a creative idea in the sense that our thought was, we'll do something. There's this established, right? There's this sort of established type of show. It's a popular show. It can be done, all these kinds of things, a little twist to it and so on. And I could not have predicted where, even the idea of taking this from an unscripted idea and making it a scripted idea. The moment you said it, I was like, oh, that's smart. And I remember how you said it too, is you said, the show needs to be funny. And you can make it funnier as a scripted show than as an unscripted show. And at the moment you said that, like my sort of wearing my marketing hat, I was like, oh, she's so right.
And it is a show that's about comedy, and it's very tragic. And I think through the tragedy, as we know, comedy is
foundation.
Tragedy.
Yeah,
comedy is tragedy plus time.
Yeah,
so
it's foundation. So I have not read anything you've written
you will
yet.
Be.
I'm looking forward to it, though. It should be fun. I will. I've not said this to a guest yet, but at some later point, we should have you on and update people on what's happened with this.
We're going to totally do that. We are going to do that. And it will be a lot funnier at the time. But what I was going to say about, in conclusion of this whole thing too, is it's been a privilege to work on this show. It was really, for some particular reason, the timing was right. Sometimes the timing's just right. Your book and meeting you and having this dropped in my lap.
And being at the right time in your own career and your experience and so on.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have been ready to write this at any other point. But the characters in this are really interesting, wonderful, complicated, funny, truly tragically funny people. And we want to see what they're going to do and how are they going to make it work,
Yeah. I like to say, you want to be rooting for people.
Right.
And it's actually hard to root for someone who's perfect. And it's hard to root for someone who doesn't have any redeeming qualities, right? There's this sweet spot that exists between those two worlds. Those are the best characters.
Flawed.
Yes.
We're all flawed.
Trust me, I know.
and if you take yourself too seriously, We don't touch politics at all in this show,
Okay.
and that's on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because this is not a show about showing how different we all are and how we all stand, and you have your opinion and I have mine, and you believe this and I believe that. All we're doing is we're going on a journey with a couple of people who are fictitious but are based on a lot of different things, and just go for the ride.
Yeah.
Just go have a good time. You know, it's kind of like when you go on a trip and you just go on an adventure, and all of a sudden you find something, or like you go on a run, you say in the woods, and at the end of it you just go, wow, I don't know what just happened, but I just feel really good.
I know, it's such a wonderful feeling. Well, I'm excited. As I said, I'm like super flattered, and being a little bit part of this has been exciting.
Oh yeah.
You know,
you're more than a little part of this.
That's nice.
You might hate me afterwards, but that's okay.
Well, no, I mean,
right.
I'm, you know, so doing the humor code, you know, this is a co-written book, and my co-author and I made this decision that was a little bit unusual, was that he was going to narrate the book. And he's not always, he doesn't always portray me in a positive way in the book, because I don't always act positively. I mean, everybody who knows me knows that. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, I like to think I have enough redeeming qualities that can make up for those imperfections and so on. And I purposely resisted editing any of that. There are plenty of things that I held firm on to edit and so on. But when he said something bad about me, or when he said something that didn't cast me in a positive light, I purposely wanted to allow that, because it's truth. And again, no one wants to read about someone who's perfect. Like that fact that those things happen make for a more interesting story. So the good news is you'll get no pushback from me on the flaws of this fictitious character.
And fictitious characters have to be exaggerated too in order for an audience to really, you know, I mean, if a character is somewhat uptight, they're going to be extremely uptight in the script. Yes. If someone is, you know, hates something, they're going to hate it.
If they're a clean freak, they are especially freakish.
If he's tall, he's extremely tall.
Yes, right.
If he's skinny, he's very skinny.
Yes.
If he's, you know, bothered by certain things, he's super bothered by those things.
Yes.
And so on. So that's what makes it funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's exaggeration, right? That's like comedy 101.
Exaggeration, of course. Well, you have a lot of 101s, but...
So I always finish with a couple questions, and we're going to wrap here in a second.
Okay.
So what are you reading, watching, or listening to that is superb?
What am I reading, watching, or listening to? What am I reading?
That's superb, not just regular okay, but I think is great.
I'm reading. I read a lot of self-help books.
Okay.
Because I don't know, because I'm always trying to be better.
I do that too.
I'm really trying to get through David Foster Wallace. I don't know why. I mean, it's 700 pages, and I'm never going to get through it. But he had written an essay that I've read multiple times, and it kind of defines everything for me. He wrote, he presented it before. It was shortly before he died.
Okay.
And it was a college graduation speech.
Oh, I'm familiar with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he tells this parable that I love.
Okay.
And so a big fish swims by two younger fish.
Okay.
And he says, "Hey boys, how's the water?" And the two fish look at each other, the two younger fish look at each other, and they look at the guy, and they go, "What's water?"
Yeah, that's great.
So, okay, so to me, that was like, okay, anybody that would think about that kind of defines everything for me.
Uh-huh.
And that's it in a nutshell. You know, that's what I'm reading and paying attention to, and that's really relevant to me right now. You know?
Yeah, what a commentary on wisdom.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you're just living your life.
Yeah.
So it just depends on what lens you're looking at it through.
Yeah,
you know, and right now the lens I'm looking at it through is kind of funny and twisted and a little off.
Mm-hmm. Last question. The secret to success everybody knows but can't seem to do.
Perseverance.
Okay.
Persistency.
Yeah. Yes. What was it? What did Scott say earlier? We had coffee earlier, and said there are no failures in Hollywood. Only quitters.
Only quitters. I am not young in the industry. I'm not old. I'm working with somebody that's as old as my mother right now, a legend in the industry, and he's still at it at 80 years old and still cares deeply about the show that we're making.
Yeah.
And I am working with somebody that's in his beginning of his career, and he's as passionate and dedicated, and persistence, perseverance. And what I do think at this point in my life too is you really have to stick very true to yourself and do what you love to do and believe in it and sacrifice. And I think now I'm willing to do that more than I was. I think fear as a younger person ruled me more than it does now. I'm less afraid of things. I already faced the worst that could happen. And I figured to myself, so have a little less money for a time. Maybe I'll have a little bit more later. If not, there's always something else to do.
Right.
You know? So persistency and belief.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Natalie, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you, Peter.
We'll reconvene, 25 more episodes. And
I look
with an
so
update,
forward to
hopefully.
it. Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit petermcgraw.org for more information about our guest, show notes, and social media links. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with others. Join Dr. Peter McGraw next week for another fun,